Is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had prepared remarks, but I have to just address a comment that Mr. Fitzgerald made. And I appreciate, him and I disagree about this issue, but I do think I certainly respect his view. I disagree with his view. I would hope that he would just as much respect my view and the views of my constituents. It's not a fear of my constituents as to looking at a gun on a table. It's the fact that 10 of my constituents were murdered a year ago at a grocery store in my community with one of these weapons. And 12 Coloradans were murdered 10 years ago on this day, today, at a movie theater 2 towns over. Now, I respect the fact that we can have reasoned, cogent debate about the nuances within this bill. I would say, and this is not directed at you, Mr. Fitzgerald, I think it's some of your other colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I would hope they would kindly spare us the sort of contentions that they're willing to work in good faith and try to find bipartisan compromise. As Mr. Cicilline has noted ad nauseum during this hearing, there's only one member on the other side of the aisle of this dais who voted for the bipartisan bill that came before the House just 3 weeks ago, a bill that the minority leader of the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell, voted for, along with many other Republican senators. So we have a bill. I've been working to try to find a Republican sponsor. I have respect for my friend from Colorado, as he knows, we serve together. But I've been looking for a sponsor on a bill that I introduced in response to a shooting that happened in my district, a bill that essentially would fund active preparedness efforts so that public facilities and locations could have the resources they need to better guard against potential mass shootings. And I can't find a single Republican to sponsor that bill. So, again, I understand there are some members on the other side of the aisle who don't believe that there should be regulations of weapons. That's your view. We disagree with your view. As I said, today is a tough day for Colorado because there are families in Colorado today mourning the loss of loved ones 10 years ago at the Aurora movie theater shooting. And tragically, since that day, our country has endured the scourge of gun violence day after day, month after month, year after year, including in Boulder, Colorado, as I mentioned, my district, just a year ago. There was a time in this country when policymakers could come together on both sides of the aisle to try to do something for the common good and to protect our communities. We did it in 1994. There were many Republicans who voted for the 1994 assault weapons ban. It is time for us to pass this bill. I believe that this bill will save lives. I also support, I know we're not debating this particular bill right now, but the bill that we will consider to ensure that gun manufacturers aren't able to escape liability in a way that no other industry is under federal law. I think that's an important step for us to take. But more than anything else, I think what you hear from my colleagues on this side of the aisle is a level of frustration that the gun violence in our communities is unsustainable. There are too many Coloradans and Americans dying. I know we all are parents. We care about our children's futures. We believe that this is a step forward in the right direction to try to save lives. That's why we're pursuing the bill that we're considering today. I recognize that some folks, I'm saying some, on the other side of the aisle have a good faith disagreement about that. Mr. Massey, he's been very candid about his views as to the contours of the Second Amendment and the ability of the Congress or the states to impose regulations under the Second Amendment. I have a different legal view, but that's his view. I do think that this measure ultimately will make a difference. It's why I'm grateful to Chairman Nadler and to Representative Cicilline for scheduling it for this markup, and it's why I'll look forward to voting in favor of it tonight. And with that, I'll yield back.
The gentleman yields back for purposes. The gentleman from Ohio seek recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
I would just point out, we would be happy to work together to address the underlying cause. Mr. Bishop has brought that up, I think, several times here. The gentlelady from Pennsylvania just a few minutes ago said that these evil acts done by evil people, these heinous things done, she said were because of Republicans, gun manufacturers, and the NRA. She did not mention that they happen because of the evil person who does the act. And Mr. Bishop and others have highlighted that's what we got to get to the bottom of, and we're willing to work on that. What we're not willing to do is take away the law, the Second Amendment liberties of law-abiding citizens. I would now yield to the gentleman from Colorado.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I want to clarify something with my friend from Colorado. I would love to work with you on that bill. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not going to make any commitments. But I have talked to Mr. Congressman Cicilline about another bill. I'd love to look at it. But I also want to make sure that we understand something. You know, the other side keeps referring to the Supreme Court as this conservative, right-wing Supreme Court, and it's unfortunate when we start putting labels on the Supreme Court. But in a time when the Supreme Court was more liberal, the Supreme Court said the Second Amendment is not an absolute right. It can have some limits, but it cannot limit a gun that is in common use. There are millions of AR-15s owned by Americans. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle have said there is no legitimate use for this gun. So either millions of Americans are illegitimately using an AR-15, or there are legitimate uses for this gun. And absolutely, there are legitimate uses for an AR-15. It will not be banned by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will not uphold this. So if you want to deal with issues that have some impact on mass shootings, which we all, and I don't think anybody would suggest, regardless of our funding arguments and other things, I don't think anybody's going to suggest that there's one side of the aisle that approves of mass shootings. If we want to deal with the underlying causes, we've got to address the fact that you can't ban a gun. It's Mr. Jordan's time, but let me finish. We can try to deal with the underlying causes of evil, and we all know that our drug culture is part of that, but we can't.